Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I instigated the French Revolution.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss Untouchable, which came out in 2011. Iain, why don't you give us the synopsis?
The story follows a young man called Driss who lives on the urban projects in Paris. He has gone for a job interview just so that he can get his slip signed so that he can keep receiving his benefits. The job he has gone for is to be a live-in carer for Philippe, who is a paraplegic. Driss passes the interview with flying colours, and him and Philippe spend a whole month building up a relationship and sharing their lives to each other.
This is an incredibly renowned film and in fact is one of France's most successful films of all time. This comes from two French writer-directors, Olivier Nakache and Eric Toledano, and these two had collaborated before, back in 2005 with a film called Let's Be Friends, and they worked together again on another film called These Happy Days, or Those Happy Days, before they would eventually work together on Untouchable. And just looking at those films, you can very easily tell that they're not about big budget action.
Yeah.
It's about interpersonal relationships between characters, and not always characters that you'd imagine would get along with each other, but finding the similarities within their differences. And they took that formula and what worked with them on those projects into Untouchable, which is, as we're told at the beginning of the film, based on a true story. Which alarm bells usually ring for any film savvy person, knowing that, potentially only 2% of what we're about to be told is probably based on those true events.
Yeah.
And so right at the beginning of the film, we are thrown right into a high-speed car pursuit chase.
Yeah, well, it starts off as like a slow drive, which immediately, for me, it set off alarm bells because I was just like, well, I'm getting a really dark, depressing feeling from this already. You've got Driss, played by Omar, and you've got Philippe, played by François Cluzet, I believe. And Philippe, the guy with the beard, is just not looking at all happy. And Driss is obviously driving the car and, feels uncomfortable, I suppose. Then all of a sudden, they start speeding through the traffic. They're dodging left and right. The police cars are chasing them. And you're like, oh, shit, what's going on? And it's not until the car stops and the police are surrounding them that Driss turns to Philippe and says, bet you I can get them to escort us. And you're like, well, he just made a bet that you could lose the police. And what kind of relationship's going on? And there's some, conversations between Driss and the police officers. And he explains that the man is in his car is obviously a paraplegic and he can't feel anything. And I need to get him to hospital. And the police are like, oh my God, right, okay, we're going to escort you. And as soon as they get in the car, Driss and Philip start laughing. You feel a bit more uplifted. And then they start playing Earth, Wind, Fire, September over the opening sequences. And there is no way you can ever hear this song and not just feel slightly more positive and slightly more uplifted in what you're doing.
It's amazing how well music works in this film. It really, music in every film is there to help you feel what the scene is trying to emote to you.
Yes.
On another level. And the music does that in this film in interesting ways as well. The characters so much so end up having long discussions about the impact on music and on culture and what it means to them and how it has shaped who they are.
Yeah. Obviously, we flick back. The car sequence at the beginning was a future telling. We flick back a month before where Driss has gone for the job interview for Philippe's live-in carer. And one thing that stood out for me right from the beginning was just the camera work. The background. You've got Driss sat in this line of potential candidates, and every other potential candidate is sat there in suit and tie, briefcase, smart. They're all white, and obviously Driss is like the only black guy there, and looks like he could steal pretty much everything in the room because he just looks like he comes from a low income family life, and you get this fabulous kind of montage of people going in for interviews for Philip's living carer, and you've got Audrey Fluette, I believe, playing Magalie. I'm gonna get to her because damn. Anyway, you have this montage of interviewees, and you can see Philip in the background, and he just doesn't seem impressed. He's just. I know it's very hard for somebody to put emotions across if they can only move their head left and right. They can't move the rest of the body. But you could just tell from his eye work that he just wasn't impressed by any of these candidates. They're telling him exactly what they think he wants to hear, all of the great talents that they've got and all the great jobs that they've done and how they really want to help him because, they love making paralyzed people feel good about themselves again.
There's a couple of awkward candidates that sort of say the wrong thing, and you can just see the look of disdain on Philippe's face. He's just like, who are these people? I don't want these people around me 24/7. They lack character.
Yeah.
Quelle est votre principale motivation?
L'argent. L'humain. Ah, moi je suis à fond dans l'humain.
C'est bien.
And then Driss kind of just storms into the room.
Takes the place of another candidate.
Storms in, slaps the paper on the table. I want you to sign it so then I can leave. And they're like, Philip's like, hold on, wait a minute. Let's start talking. And I felt, like with the beginning, I felt a bit uncomfortable with this sequence. Mainly because, and I put this down to the fabulous acting. Because he was rude, he was obnoxious. He's looking at Magalie like, give me 5 minutes with her and I'll cover her in marmalade, and I felt like you do not want this guy. You do not want this guy for the job because, whoever does that, whoever walks into a job interview with that kind of attitude and gets the job, fucking Driss does, doesn't he? Because he just shows to Philip, Philip's just like, actually, I like this guy. He's big. He's strong. He can carry me everywhere. He's willing on learning. He looks like he just needs a really good bath.
I love the setup where he's just like, look, I can't sign your papers today. No one here has the authority to do that. So come back tomorrow morning, and then you can pick up your papers, then go claim your benefit. And of course, we come back the following morning, and Driss is walking around the house, and the maid is just like, yes, this is this room, and this will be your room, and Driss is just like, what? I just want my papers, and then I'm out.
Yeah.
This is a mistake. Until he sees the bathroom.
Bon, il vous attend. Une minute.
Prior to this, we'd seen Driss sort of in his home life. And it's a very sort of run-down neighborhood somewhere in Paris, which is, it's a very deprived neighborhood. This poor mother has got too many children, it would seem, and there's sort of anarchy and chaos in the house. But it's still a loving family at its heart that's still there. And so you can see that Driss has come from this background and then thrust into this mansion next to a millionaire.
Yeah, well, I mean, with the family stuff, it was very awkward to understand exactly what was going on because, like you said, there are a lot of children in this flat, and Driss seems to be the oldest one. There is that funny sequence where he's trying to have a bath and the little kids are running the tap, and you can just see that there's constant just clashes over and over again because, there's not enough water or there's not enough food or this, that, and the next thing. And then the mother comes home, and I wasn't too sure that it was actually his mother. Because, there's a conversation later on where he calls her the old woman to his younger brother, and he's explaining it to Philip about his auntie or his uncle or something or other. But the conversation at the beginning between, let's just say the mother and Driss was really well done because she says to him, I haven't heard from you in 6 months. Where the hell have you been? I could have done with your help, and now you're going to turn up here like it's a hotel and you're just going to bum around and get yourself into trouble again. You need to sort yourself out. And she kicks him out. And I felt like she got really annoyed when he pulls out the Fabergé egg that he had obviously stolen from Philippe and puts it on the table. And it kind of showed to her that he hadn't changed. You know, we learned later on that Driss had only just been released from prison for armed robbery. And so she's angry that he's just going right back into his lifestyle again. But as we already know, you know, if you come from a certain background and end up right back there, you kind of fall back into the same routine. Luckily, Driss has got Philippe to fall back on. And yeah, that sequence where he walks into his own room and sees his bath. After the bath sequence you've just seen, you're like, oh my God, he's got running water. He's got his own towels, you know, he's got his own bed. And he just feels really comfortable. And then he has to go and see Philippe. And Philippe's just like, this is what you'll do. You know, you've got to keep all my muscles going. You've got to work every single part of my body. You've got to lift me from my chair and back here and back there and wash me. And you've also got to empty my ass.
Je fais pas ça, moi. Je vide pas le cul d'un mec que je connais pas. Même un mec que je connais, d'ailleurs, je vide pas son cul. Je vide le cul de personne en général.
That's right, this film goes there.
Yeah.
But this film does it in a really light-hearted way that is actually very, very funny.
Yes.
Watching this film, knowing the premise to it, I was expecting the worst. I was expecting this really tense, horrible drama about humans having this undignified sort of disability where they would need someone to wipe their own ass, but it's played very well, and it is played for laughs, but it doesn't override the real nature of the situation of sort of the nurse caring characters and the Philippe character.
Yeah, it was very well done. You sit there, like Ari said, you sit there thinking this is going to be awfully tense. But then the scenes make you laugh as they go further and further on. You know, the sequence where they're getting Driss to put tights onto Philippe's legs. And they explain it that he has to wear these tights to keep the blood flowing. Because obviously he can't move anything down there, and obviously they don't want to cause him any harm. But Driss is like, whoa, I'm not putting tights on a man. No. And so you're laughing because you're like, well, you have to, or the film's over now. And then he finally puts the tights on, and there's the way that Philip kind of talks back, like, you're really good at doing this. Have you ever thought about being a beautician or a healthcare worker? And Driss is like, shut up, man. Just knock it off. And then they pull up the rubber gloves. And at first I was like, why would they put gloves on his hand? They don't really need to keep that. Oh, those aren't for Philip, are they? No. Those are Driss's rubber gloves. And it's the way Driss is like, no, tell me what these are for. Tell me. No, I'm not doing that, man. I'm not doing that. You know, they have this whole conversation where Driss is talking to Yvonne, the maid, in the kitchen, and he's like, I'm not emptying his ass. I'm not emptying ass. I won't empty even my best friend's ass. I'm not emptying it. And she's like, can I finish my dinner first?
Je vide le cul de personne en général. C'est une question de principe.
On peut en parler plus tard, après mon déjeuner par exemple.
And that sort of humour carries throughout the entire film. And the chemistry between these two actors, as throughout these first few days we see them bonding with each other, they soon develop an amazing friendship that you as an audience get invested into straight away, watching this paraplegic sort of regaining a sense of himself through this companion that he now has that is with him day and night. And we see the hardships where he struggles to breathe at night, where he's dealing with phantom pains, where he's explaining to Driss some of the limitations that he's in, and then Driss just going, don't worry about that, we'll go and do this.
Yeah.
And then he takes him out, and there's this great scene where Driss is running, and Philippe's in the chair behind him, and he turns around and he's like, man, your chair's too slow. Yeah. And he takes him to an engineer, and he gets some thrusters put on it, and he take off down the street, and you just see Philippe smiling. He's just like, yeah, I got this motor cart now.
Yeah.
And it's just those nice little touches that really hit you in the feels. It really does.
It does.
C'est un arbre. Un arbre qui chante.
There's parts where, like, I mean, I enjoyed it, but I didn't. I felt like it was kind of just slotted in just to kind of get more feels out of it. It was the whole daughter sequences. Philip and his wife were unable to conceive a child, and so they adopted instead. And then his wife sadly passed away, and he was involved in a paragliding accident, which is why he's numb from the neck down. But his daughter still lives with him, and she's growing up, and she's obviously at that awkward age of being a teenager, and she's got this boyfriend, and she's the way Driss and Yvonne put it over to Philip is that she treats them like crap. And if Driss is to be Philip's body and move around his arms and legs, then he has to be his hand as well, or Philip has to deal with it. And it was a really nice sequence at that point where Philip goes in and speaks to his daughter and basically says to her, these people take care of me, I take care of you, you're either going to respect them or, there's going to be fucking hell to pay. But then that was it. There'd been this build-up, there would been the daughter, she asked Driss to, I don't know, beat up her boyfriend or whatever because he's dumped her and called her a slut, which Driss goes and does. But then you don't see her ever again in the rest of the film. And I'm like, I'd have liked maybe a bit more. I mean, based on a true story, maybe it did happen, maybe play it for life. But I would have liked a bit more father-daughter kind of reconciliation. It's the same with the writing of the letters. Philip is writing letters to this woman, and they've never spoken. So Driss is just like, whoa, fuck this. Here's a phone. I'm putting you on speaker. You can set up a date. But I felt it conflicted because, we've just gone through all the emotional feels of Philip talking about his wife and how he loved her and the egg and how, he really badly misses her. But now I'm going dating, and which is fine. Everybody should kind of get over and date again.
He didn't want to date. He sort of decided that he was going to have a spiritual, intellectual connection with this other person where they would never meet.
Yeah, which I was kind of happy with. But the whole dating stuff, getting all dressed up and going to the cafe and having a few drinks and meeting up, I'm like, You're leaving it ambiguous now, of what's going to happen in the future. Okay, I can understand that, Philip has explained that there's no sexual things, and that's fine. But if you leave us on a cliffhanger, if him and this new girl are going to be left together, I'd rather you've just kind of just left it out, because now I'm going to sit here like, oh, did they get married? Did they get together? Did they have more children?
I liked the additional cast members, the supporting cast in the film.
Yes.
I think did a really good job.
Yes.
I really liked sort of the head maid at the house. I thought some of her facial expressions were really quite humorous when they needed to be, and really told her story without her having too much screen time.
Yes.
One of my favourite moments is when she's rummaging through the bag of Driss when he's first moved in. And she's aware of his criminal background, really, when she finds the switch knife, or the flip knife, and a couple of other items. And you just get a sense, but she doesn't necessarily go straight away and warn Philippe. She's just dubious of who this character is. There's another very interesting moment when Philippe is talking to his lawyer, I think it is, and his lawyer really just says, that is your carer.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? There's like a million other people better qualified than this person. This guy doesn't pity you. And Philippe was just like, well, that is exactly the point.
Yes.
He has no pity for me. This guy doesn't even remember sometimes that I am an invalid. He will pass me the phone expecting me to take it from him. And so that's the real crux of the film, when you realise that, Philippe didn't want any of those wet fish counsellors, support workers or whatever that wouldn't really give him a spark of life anymore. Whereas Driss is
forcing him out into the world. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's a great moment. So, and a lot of these moments also come from the supporting cast.
Yes.
The daughter aspect to Philippe, it wasn't really well explored, but neither was Driss's home life.
And
there
his
were very
brother,
small scenes, but they did highlight the different parenting tactics that both of these characters have, and the spheres of life that is going on around them whilst their relationship is intensifying as friends.
Yeah, that's a good point. I gotta do it now. I'm bringing it up now. Magalie. Damn. Damn, girl. I tried. First time she appears on screen, I was like, she's very pretty. I like her. I love the way that Driss would, play along like, yeah, you and me, baby, we're going to play along. And then as the film went on, he pursued this relationship, or tried to pursue and build a relationship with Magalie. And she just looked fine in most of her scenes. I couldn't help myself, She red hair, red lipstick, black clothes, God damn, the French accent as well. I could just butter her up like a croissant and shove her in my face. And then it turns out she's a lesbian. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Je suis pas contre un plan à trois.
I felt like Driss at that point. It was just so brilliantly done because he was constantly pursuing this, relationship, fantasizing about this relationship with her, and she kept just knocking him back. And until she reveals that she's obviously got a lesbian partner, you couldn't understand. I couldn't understand why she's knocking him back. I'm like, hey, he's a big hunky man. He looks fine. Why not? Why don't you want to have a bath with him? I'd have a bath with you. Like the part where he's painted the picture. And she's like, yeah, it's very interesting. And he goes to kiss her and she just slaps him really hard. I was like, oh, it was just too much. Or my absolute best sequence in this whole relationship was when it was Philippe's birthday. And they're listening to the music. And Driss walks in and gets everybody else to move along one so he can sit down to Magalie. And he sits down next to her. And you've got the woman in the purple dress just stood there at the end of the row like, there's no chair here. What am I supposed to do?
The humour in this film is top notch, like I said, and it was so unexpected when I was expecting this real heartfelt drama. And it is still that heartfelt drama with just so much comedy in there that you just remain emotionally invested into the film. I have so many favourite and memorable sequences in the film. Just the interplay and the dialogue between the characters. It's also a major clash of cultures. As I said, music is a big part of the film.
Yeah.
And Philippe takes Driss to the theatre, and they're going to watch an opera performance. And already we've established that Driss is a little bit of a stoner. And experimenting with Philippe has offered him weed and joints at several instances in the film.
Medicinal!
Of course. And so they've had a few, and they've gone to the theatre, and the play starts, and this man dressed as a tree starts singing, and Driss cracks instantly. He just can't believe what he's seeing, what he's hearing. And of course, this opera sort of played up a little bit. I don't know if they really go to such extremes in their presentation of these singers, but he just cracks up, and of course Philippe's just like, no, this is opera house, this is smart and it's professional, and he breaks too. And it's great because it's one culture showing the other the hilarity from their perspective. And that instance comes again at Philippe's birthday when he's there, and he's got all these musicians there, and they're playing these classical pieces of music which are instantly recognizable as coffee adverts. And Driss is just like, oh, fuck your music. It doesn't, look at all these people. They're bored shitless. This is some music.
Yeah.
And the dance number that he does that gets everyone moving. And, and Philippe, obviously, he's stuck in his chair, but he's moving along with him. He's like, if you are my hands and feet, you're dancing for me and I'm dancing with you. And other people at the party get involved. And it's just another one of those feel-good moments.
Yeah, I liked it just before that Philip had said about how Yvonne plans his birthday every year and it's always a boring affair and everybody just hangs around. And then this year, he was actually having a good time because everybody else was having a good time, just dancing. It was really well done.
Yeah. And I guess another favourite sequence would be when Philippe takes Driss to go paragliding. And you're just like, well, this is what injured you last time.
Yeah, but it's a clear day.
But it's a clear day, and it's the adrenaline rush of being that high up. It makes him feel alive.
Yeah.
And just Driss constantly going, fuck that, I'm out of here. It's a running joke where he's just like, fuck that, I'm not cleaning your ass, and he'll clean his ass. He's like, fuck that, I'm not getting up there, and he's up there. And it's like, it constantly does that joke, but it works because Omar Sy just sells this character so damn well, and makes him very likable, and all of the humour just works. So there's so many favourite scenes to talk about.
My favourite scenes, like Gary said, they're just pretty much the whole freaking movie. I mean, the first time Driss sees his bathroom, the look on his face of just, oh my God, I could sleep in that bath was amazing. The flow on from that, when Driss tries to work with Philippe the first time, he puts Philip in his chair and forgets to strap him in, so Philip almost falls out of the chair. He puts him in the shower and he says, oh, this stuff isn't lathering up very well, and it turns out he's put the foot cream in his hair and the shampoo on his feet. That was fucking awesome. I love the sequence where he's talking about how he's not going to empty out Philip's ass. Just because you wouldn't want to do it yourself, but then you realise, actually, I'm a living carrot. I kind of just have to suck it up and do it. That sequence I've just remembered is just as good as Driss and Yvonne talking later about how the gardener has a bit of a thing for Yvonne and how he wants to slip her his cucumber. Oh, it's just really funny. The cafe sequence, Driss has taken Philip out for a walk at 4 a.m. in Paris. They've had a couple of joints, they're quite high. They go into a cafe, they fucking order God knows how much food. And it's the way that they're laughing and joking and getting comfortable with each other, and then the quick flick of Philippe turning to Driss and saying, you stole my egg. That was given to me by my late wife. You have to return it. And you're like, emotionally, I changed and went, oh, shit. He knows about the egg. Okay, we need to get that egg back. I love the sequence at the beginning as well between Driss and his mum or his auntie. Like I said, the seriousness mixing with the comedy works really, really well. The montage of Driss and Philip working together more, and Driss getting into his work and knowing exactly what he needs to do and all those types of things, especially the final sequence where they've got the masseuse or the pair of massage women, and Driss is getting like a full body massage and passing a joint to Philip, and Philip is just getting his ears tingled because really that's all he can feel. That was awesome. Magalie, any scene really with her? I'm probably just gonna freeze frame her right now and just stare at her.
So,
and my favourite sequence, my last favourite sequence is when Driss has returned to Philippe because he had to go home to deal with some family stuff, and Philippe has become depressed because he's had to get a different carer in, and he's grown this big beard. So Yvonne has called Driss back and said, look, he's starting to get depression. You need to come back and take care of him. Driss has come back and got him. We flash back to the drive sequence at the beginning, which I thought was really well placed. It was very well placed. We got it at the beginning, and then it comes back in at the end to show us, look, this is where we are. And he manages to make Philip start to feel again. And he decides that he needs a haircut and he needs to have a shave. And he just keeps fucking up the beard on purpose. Makes him look like Yosemite Sam. Or my absolute fucking favourite was when he cut it into a Hitler moustache. This is how funny this film is. They're taking the piss out of Hitler, and then they make jokes about invalids and their Nazi signs. Oh my God. I was dying.
That's right. The humour just really elevates the film. It really makes it rewatchable. Watching these two characters, you become so invested in this friendship that you end up loving these two characters. And when the film ends and you're kind of left wanting more. You kind of felt like you're a part of this family.
Yeah.
And then you see what I always like when they do this in a film, they show images or some video footage of the original people that inspired this story.
Yeah.
And it's just like great because the two of them are still best friends. You know, they've gone off and gotten married or remarried and had children.
Yeah.
And yet they're still friends. And that just really, I don't know.
Hits home.
It really does hit it home. Which is why it comes in no surprise I have to recommend this film. This is a story you've seen before. That goes without saying. You could say it's a very trite in that regard, but the material is elevated by these actors, by these writers and directors. The pacing of the film is almost spotless because for a drama, without your action beats, it goes at a breakneck pace of 2 hours. You're riveted,
Yeah,
because you go on this journey with Driss, and you know it is a culture shock watching the clash of these two people who find common ground, and that for me is what makes it such a successful film that you could watch again and again. I think it's really quite monumental. I think the film is filled with heart and is also very beautiful to watch. So yeah, I think the film is wonderfully done, and I am a little bit hesitant because Hollywood is looking at remaking this film already, and they've already recast the characters, and it looks like we're going to get Bryan Cranston playing Philippe and Kevin Hart playing Driss. So
what the fuck?
It's testament that this story works, but will it work when it gets more remake treatment? That's yet to be seen. But you should definitely check out Untouchable, 2011 French version.
I definitely recommend this movie. It made me really want to go back and watch Driving Miss Daisy. I haven't seen Driving Miss Daisy in fucking God knows how long. But this film reminded me of the relationship between Jessica Tandy and Morgan Freeman. You know, like you said, the culture shock. You know, the embracing of their backgrounds, you know, learning from each other, you know, just the comedy, the drama, the acting, the setting. I mean, maybe it's just the fucking French accent, but goddamn, that accent is pretty goddamn classy. As a bonus, if you like beautiful fucking red-headed women, Magalie, you know. But yes, the film is absolutely brilliant, and I definitely recommend it. And if Gary is right, if Hollywood is remaking it, check this one out now before they fucking overshadow it with Bryan Cranston's head.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
Putain, ma chérie. Mais quel con, au secours.